Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Shane Beamer, the South Carolina Gamecocks just continue to get better as a football team every single week. Now, LaNorris Sellers at the quarterback position is probably getting the national media attention in terms of the improvements we've seen from him throughout 2024. That's where we're going to start when we're talking the South Carolina team. But as I'm rewatching this Missouri game, you start to realize that it's not only just LaNorris Sellers who's getting better as a football player. It is coming from pretty much every position group on the football field. They just continue to get better. So, yeah, LaNorris Sellers is going to get the national media attention. We're going to dive into where he's really improved over the last couple of weeks. But I think throughout this South Carolina roster, like you're seeing people and players just start to play their best football down the stretch in 2024. And I think I want to start with a South Carolina fan in the comment section. This probably 3 weeks ago at this point. They made a comment that resonated with me, and that was this South Carolina team has the ability to beat anybody any given Saturday. And I think that's what made this South Carolina team so exciting in 2024. Now, I would take that one step further and say, when that comment was made, this South Carolina team would have some really, really good performances and then kind of some choppy performances as well. You're starting to see those choppy plays and those choppy performances kind of be far and in between. Like, I think there's a level of consistency you're starting to see from South Carolina where, look, we know this ceiling is really high for South Carolina. We've seen them play some really good football in 2024, but it was kind of topsy-turvy. It was a little bit of a roller coaster. You're starting to really see them smooth it out, especially with LaNorris Sellers at the quarterback position. Want to get into kind of just a few players and things that are standing out to me for the South Carolina program. Now, before we get into it, as always, a massive shout out to the South Carolina fans. Many of y'all know it's been a blast talking this team, really all of 2024, but especially the last couple of weeks, and the amount of support y'all continue to show. It means the absolute world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, I got a full note sheet here in terms of players that I want to shout out. I'm probably not going to get to every player that deserves a shout out, so let it fly in the comment section. Would love to hear from y'all. And without further ado, let's get into it. We got to start with LaNorris Sellers, and I think the term I would use is maturing at the quarterback position, and you see that in a couple different ways. And I think it starts with him kind of walking that line between being that elite playmaker, but also not really putting the ball in harm's way. Like we saw LaNorris Sellers make some plays that kind of made your jaw drop early on in his career. We knew he had the capability of doing that going back to his high school recruiting days. Like this kid was super talented that probably needed a little bit more development. I think over the last couple of weeks, you've seen this kid mature and blossom at the quarterback position. He seems much more comfortable in terms of walking that line in terms of I'm going to be a difference maker. I'm going to make some plays that you just can't really teach. Some of the stuff LaNorris Sellers has, you can't teach that. But while I'm making those plays, I'm not really going to put the ball in harm's way. You saw, 2 plays in that Missouri game where he got, sacked and dropped the football, but got back on it. And then the very next play, airmails the football, throws an interception. Outside of those 2 plays, ball wasn't really put in harm's way all that often against Missouri, and he made some really high-level throws, so you're seeing him kind of toe that line. But I think also, Dowell Loggins deserves a massive shout-out in terms of cultivating and designing an offense around LaNorris Sellers, where he is clearly they're kind of leaning into his skill set. They're giving him a lot of play action to work with it. It starts with the South Carolina run game. Whether it's Rocket Sanders, whether it's LaNorris Sellers, they've been running the football really well. And even when they didn't run the football all that well against Missouri, they were able to work their passing attack off that run game. They went to play action 10 times in this football game. LaNorris Sellers, 9 of 10 for over 200 yards and 3 touchdowns off of play action. And so you're starting to see really Dowell Loggins design this offense in a way that LaNorris Sellers ain't doing that much thinking. He's just going out there and playing football, being an athlete, making some really high-level throws. That's kind of where it starts. LaNorris Sellers, as the season continues to go on, getting better as a football player. But I think on the other side, like Dowell Loggins doing a phenomenal job designing the offense around what LaNorris Sellers does well. And that's probably the most important conversation to have for an offensive player, where it's this offense looks different from last year with Spencer Rattler. You knew it would look different. I give Dow Loggins a ton of credit for saying, hey, we got to do some stuff different. We got to build this offense around LaNorris Sellers with his unique set of skill sets. They've done a really good job of that. I think the second thing, when he's clean, LaNorris Sellers against Missouri, when pass protection was good, 18 to 21, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Elite numbers when this kid is clean. And we're going to talk about the South Carolina offensive line. This offensive line is clearly getting better, but you're seeing LaNorris Sellers, when he has time to process, doing a really good job. Secondly, I guess this is probably thirdly, he's doing a really good job with the internal clock. You saw LaNorris Sellers take a lot of sacks, and yeah, the offensive line struggled early, but you could kind of tell the clock, the internal clock, if you will, for LaNorris Sellers to get the football out was not going fast enough. He was holding on to the football too long and therefore taking a lot of negative plays. LaNorris Sellers doing a really good job of, hey, if there's nothing there, like I can go create with my legs. He's kind of kind of figuring out how to, hey, I want to be a pocket passer. I want to push the ball down the field, but when it's not there, when do I go use my legs and be an athlete, which puts so much pressure on an opposing defense? That fine line between, hey, I want to keep my eyes downfield and push it down the field, but when it's not there, hey, I can go be an athlete and really hurt teams with my legs too. He's doing a really good job kind of balancing that and then pushing the ball down the field. Against Missouri, 3 of 4, 20+ yards down the field. This is kind of how this South Carolina offense wants to operate. They either want to work some screens and work the tight ends or running backs, or they want to push the ball down the field to guys like Nick Harbor. You saw a couple brilliant passes from LaNorris Sellers. Again, that corner post to Nick Harbor. Uh, that corner route, slot fade, you might call it. I mean, you don't throw that football any better. And so I give LaNorris Sellers a lot of credit there for pushing the ball down the field. Now, it's clear LaNorris Sellers is getting better as a football player, but I think the supporting cast has gotten a lot better too. Let's talk about the pass catchers on the outside. And again, a ton of credit for Dow Loggins. This is a passing attack that likes to work the running backs and tight ends, and you got a very, very good one with Josh Simon. Rocket Sanders obviously can catch the football out of the backfield. He's really leaning into what these pass catchers do really well. And there's really two things. One, they work vertically down the field really well, and they're really good after the catch. And so you look at a guy like Nick Harbor and say, this is about as good as it gets in terms of a vertical playmaker you see in the country with the size, with the track and field background. Hey, we're going to put Nick Harbor in spots where he is most comfortable. That is working vertically down the field. And then a guy like Jared Brown. I didn't know Jared Brown had that kind of juice in him. And you look at Jared Brown and say, you get the football to him in space, there's a different level of burst that he has. And so you're kind of, yes, is the wide receiver room elite around LaNorris Sellers? No, probably not. I would guess that's a position that South Carolina tries to address in the transfer portal. But they're doing a really good job leaning into what these playmakers on the outside do well. And you're starting to see these playmakers just get better at football. I mean, Nick Harbor, we knew it would take a little bit for Nick Harbor to kind of put it together as a college football wide receiver. I think you're starting to see him do it. I mean, Delvin Campbell barely has really played and been a contributor for South Carolina. Probably comes up with the biggest play of that football game late in the fourth quarter. These pass catchers are getting better as well. And then I think finally the offensive line. Now, Casey Henry, excuse me, probably struggled a little bit against Missouri at that right tackle spot. But it's night and day better than what we saw early in the season for South Carolina. I think a lot of South Carolina fans were really, concerned early on in the year with this offensive line, and kind of rightfully so, right? You were starting Josiah Thompson, true freshman at left tackle. You had a couple new faces that came in through the transfer portal. There were some reasons to believe that, yeah, this offensive line was going through some growing pains. They have gotten a lot better. Tree Babalede, coming in and playing left tackle at a very high level against Missouri. When you have your quarterback starting to play better, we probably should have included Rocket Sanders in terms of what he's doing at the running back position, the offensive line and pass catchers, all just getting better. And I think most importantly, Dow Loggins really figuring out how to use these pieces in the passing attack. That's a very good sign for South Carolina. Now, the reason we're all so high on South Carolina really didn't have to do with the offense to start the year. It was this South Carolina defense that I think is one of the best units in the country. Upon further review of that Missouri game, specifically in the second half, I think on paper and live, you're like, oh, the South Carolina defense is struggling a little bit, especially in the second half. And that might be true to an extent. You got to give some credit to Brady Cook and those wide receivers. There were some really good throws and really good catches that were made. I don't think this had that much to do with South Carolina's defense not playing good. And you got a top 25 performance from Missouri. I was very adamant that I didn't think Missouri was a top 25 team heading into that matchup. They just haven't showed that throughout the 2024 year. That looked like a top 25 team against South Carolina Saturday night. And so I think there's a fair amount of credit that you just got to give to this Missouri offense. I think secondly, and probably my favorite aspect about South Carolina, there's probably a couple things that I want to talk about. One, this team on third downs is so good. I mean, Missouri was 1 of 9 on third downs that on Saturday. That's obviously a really good recipe when you're trying to win football games. This pass rush, if South Carolina's gotten an identity in how they want to dominate on defense. You know, they want to stop the run on first and second down, force you into those third and long situations, and then just get after you with these edge rushers and guys on the inside like TJ Sanders. You look at Dylan Stewart and say that's about as good of a true freshman pass rusher we've seen in a very long time. Kyle Kennard is playing himself into a first round NFL draft pick. TJ Sanders on the inside, one of the best interior defensive line pass rushes we see in the country. If you can win on first and second down, stopping the run, which South Carolina has done, it's one of the best rushing defenses in the country. These linebackers are playing super, super good. Bam Martin, Scott, Demetrius Knight, Debo Williams. You stop the run on first and second down. When you get teams into those third and long situations, there's a reason South Carolina is so good on third downs, because this pass rush, they don't need to bring pressure to go impact the quarterback. You know, they only have to bring 4, drop 7, and they are impacting the quarterback every single third and long pass rush situation with how good they rush the passer. And so you're seeing South Carolina say, hey, we're really good on first and second down. We're going to get you doing a lot of third and longs. We're going to be elite on third downs because of our pass rush. You're starting to see that formula for South Carolina really start to take place, where they want to run the football on offense, hit explosive plays in the passing attack, and lean on this defense. That recipe has really worked the last month of football, and I think it's going to continue to work throughout the 2024 season. Now, we'll dive more into the pathway and what needs to happen for South Carolina to get themselves into that college football playoff conversation. But I think if you're a South Carolina fan, you're fired up that you have Clemson that last week of the season, that kind of final opportunity to send a message to the college football playoff committee that the South Carolina team's legit. And we've seen the playoff committee lean into what have you done for me lately? And South Carolina lately has looked like one of the best teams in the country. We'll see how it plays out. But again, there's that playoff conversation to have. But I think it starts with this South Carolina team right now is starting to look like a college football playoff caliber team. That's what excites me the most. We'll sign out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.